while shifting global realities. There emerges a figure whose defiance has unsettled the most powerful capitals of the world. His actions are not those of a man seeking short-lived applause, but rather of a leader intent on demonstrating that the time of unquestioned external domination is over, when he confronted those who believed Africa would forever remain a playground for their influence. He was not merely protecting his borders. He was delivering a message to every corner of the globe. That message resounds even louder when directed toward those leaders who assumed that intimidation and coercion could silence African sovereignty. The recent events have shown beyond doubt why challenging him was a miscalculation of historic proportions. To understand the scale of what has taken place, one must remember the patterns of history. For centuries, Africa was treated as an endless reservoir of resources, stripped bare to fuel the wealth of empires that offered little in return but chains of dependency. Entire populations endured poverty while their gold, uranium, and oil financed distant luxuries. Political independence was declared decades ago, yet economic servitude persisted through contracts, military presence, and the manipulation of currencies. We are no longer your mines, no longer your silent colonies, he declared with conviction. That illusion of weakness has now been shattered, and the tremors are felt as far as Washington, Paris, and Tel Aviv. The remarkable transformation underway is not just about removing foreign troops or renegotiating mining contracts. It is about altering the very psychology of power. When a young soldier declared that external armies must leave his land, he did so without the deferential tone the world had grown accustomed to hearing. He issued not a request, but an ultimatum. And when those troops departed, an entire generation saw the proof that sovereignty is not a slogan, but a choice. The departure of foreign troops was more than a military maneuver. It was a symbolic act of liberation. For generations, outside powers had justified their presence in Africa under the guise of security, counterterrorism, or humanitarian assistance. Yet those missions rarely produced stability. Instead, they entrenched dependency, drained resources, and reinforced the idea that African nations could not stand on their own. By insisting that these forces leave, he demonstrated the courage to expose this myth. And when they departed, the myth collapsed before the eyes of millions across the continent. Young people realized that foreign military presence was not an inevitability, but a choice, one that could be revoked by leaders with enough determination. But sovereignty is not won solely on the battlefield or through diplomatic announcements. It is secured through economic independence. For decades, African nations have exported raw resources, while importing finished goods at prices many times higher. This pattern guaranteed that profit flowed outward, leaving behind poverty, unemployment, and frustration. When he announced the state-owned gold refinery, the world understood Africa was no longer content to dig its ship. Africa was ready to build and own. External powers miscalculated badly. They assumed that sanctions, threats, or covert destabilization could weaken him, but each attempt backfired. Instead of collapsing, his popularity grew stronger. Across neighboring countries, his defiance became a rallying cry. Leaders in Mali, Niger, and Guinea looked at his actions and thought, if he can, why can't we? And legitimacy is the key. Unlike many leaders propped up by foreign sponsorship, this man draws his strength directly from his people. I don't need approval from Paris. I don't seek applause from Washington. My only duty is to the soil of Africa and its people, he said. This authenticity turned him into a symbol not just of his nation, but of a continent in transition. The transformation that has begun in Africa cannot be measured only in statistics or economic indicators. Its essence lies in the awakening of a collective consciousness. For too long, Africans were told progress would come only by obeying external prescriptions, policies drafted in distant offices, loans dictated by bankers in Washington, military doctrines imported from generals in NATO. But now, a new voice has emerged. It declares boldly, Africa's destiny will no longer be written by outsiders. It will be written by Africans. When he confronts powerful figures abroad, the meaning extends beyond individual disagreements. Each confrontation is a clash of history itself. On one side stands the arrogance of empires. On the other, the memory of colonized generations demanding closure. His speeches are not just rhetoric, they are catharsis. They give courage to those who fear speaking out. They deliver a warning to those who assume silence will last forever. Africa will no longer whisper. Africa will shout. The youth, in particular, see themselves in him. They see someone unafraid of confrontation, unafraid to call out the hypocrisy of world powers. This recognition is dangerous to the established order, because once millions believe submission is not inevitable, the entire system begins to crack. And so, when he turned his gaze toward Donald Trump, the world held its breath. For decades, U.S. presidents assumed they could lecture Africa without consequence. They saw African leaders as junior partners, subordinates, but in this encounter, the script flipped. He looked Trump directly in the eye and said, "Stop meddling with African leaders, stop treating sovereign nations as pawns, respect us or step aside." Those words shook the foundations of global politics because they expressed what so many had felt, but dared not articulate: the significance of his confrontation with Trump lies not just in words, but in symbolism. For the first time, an African leader addressed an American president not with deference, but with equality, indeed, with moral superiority. It signaled the end of unquestioned Western authority. It demonstrated that respect must now be earned, not assumed. It revealed that Africa would no longer accept lectures from those whose histories are marked by wars, invasions, and exploitation. You talk about democracy, yet you invade nations. You speak of freedom, yet you fund dictators. You claim to defend peace, yet you sell weapons that fuel chaos. Enough is enough, he declared. This was not just a rebuke to Trump. It was a rebuke to centuries of exploitation disguised as partnership. It was Africa standing tall, refusing to bow. What makes this moment irreversible is the awakening it has sparked. Once people taste dignity, they cannot return to submission. Once they witness foreign troops leaving, resources reclaimed, and leaders who confront global powers without fear, they cannot be persuaded that dependence is destiny. The enemies of change may try everything: propaganda, sanctions, even coups, but the consciousness has spread too far. It will pass from one generation to another until it forms the foundation of a new Africa. Confident, sovereign, unapologetically free, and to the world, his message remains clear: Africa is not your playground. Africa is not your mine. Africa is not your chessboard. We are free, we are sovereign, and we are unbreakable. This is why Ibrahim Traoré's confrontation with Trump is more than politics, it is history. It is the thunder of a new era. It is the sound of chains breaking, not just in one country, but across an entire continent, ready to reclaim its destiny.